There was a time when The Flash was considered to be one of the most highly anticipated films of the summer. It screened at CinemaCon in the same slot that had launched Top Gun Maverick to meteoric success the year before, and the initial reactions from that screening were overwhelmingly positive. The vibe was, believe the hype. So what happened? How did The Flash go from being one of the summer's most surefire hits to one of the biggest box office bombs of all time? Let's take a look at The Flash. The Flash was first announced in 2014, with Ezra Miller set to star as the Scarlet Speedster. Miller, known at the time for their roles in We Need to Talk About Kevin and The Perks of Being a Wallflower, was not quite a household name yet. They would go on to appear as the Flash in Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, both versions of Justice League,
Dostoevsky,
and even had a cameo as their version of Barry Allen in the CW's Flash TV show.
What the hell is this?
Myself the same question. Literally.
All before their own solo film, announced years earlier, would release in theaters. After a slew of directors and creative teams came and went, Warner Brothers finally settled on director Andy Muschietti, known for directing It Chapters 1 and 2. He was working off of a script by Christina Hodson, known for her work on Bumblebee and fellow DC film Birds of Prey, both considered highlights in their respective franchises. Loosely adapting Flashpoint, one of the Flash's most iconic comic runs, and brimming with the promise of a multiversal narrative that would bring back Michael Keaton's Batman, The Flash was poised to do serious business at the box office. This could be DC's No Way Home, or at the very least, Multiverse of Madness. However, when the film finally released in theaters on June 16, 2023, it grossed $55.1 million at the domestic box office in its opening weekend, and is projected to finish its run with a total gross of less than $300 million total worldwide. This is a far cry from No Way Home's $1.9 billion total, or even Multiverse of Madness's $955 million total. $300 million would put The Flash in the same box office league as Black Adam or the first Shazam, except both of those movies earned more than what The Flash is projected to. On the MCU side, remember when Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was the movie that signaled that superhero fatigue might be kicking in? The movie was a disaster at the box office, making less than Ant-Man 1 and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Embarrassing for a movie that was supposed to be the launch of the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and had introduced Kang as the next Thanos-level threat. Well, Quantumania made $476 million worldwide total this year, over $100 million more than The Flash will make. Let's break down how this happened. The crowded summer. This was a big summer for blockbusters. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse kicked things off on June 2nd, and later we'll get into why this film in particular hurt The Flash in more ways than one. The next week saw the release of Transformers: Rise of the Beasts on June 9th, and The Flash followed the week after on June 16th, and the blows keep coming with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny releasing on June 30th, then Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 on July 14th, and finally, Barbie and Oppenheimer, both on July 21st. In a crowded summer like this one, a blockbuster has to stand out to be successful, especially if the next movie is taking all of your IMAX and other premium format screens in a week or two. Part of standing out is being unique, which leads nicely to our next reason for The Flash's downfall. Spider-Man. Across the Spider-Verse is superb. Critics and audiences love the film, and it's making a lot of money. At the time of recording, it's made $560 million worldwide, and is eyeing a $700 million plus final total. Across the Spider-Verse opened a full 2 weeks before The Flash. Both films deal with the multiverse and both grapple with the question of whether some tragic events in the life of a hero have to happen for the good of multiple universes. Audiences were left with a feeling of, been there, probably seen a better version of that. If you're going to see one superhero movie about multiverses, better make it Spider-Man. For the fans. One major error in Warner Brothers' release strategy for The Flash was hosting hundreds of free fan screenings across the country. The idea was to build hype for a film that had been labeled as a bona fide crowd pleaser at CinemaCon and in test screenings. Nearly a month before release, Warner Brothers held free screenings in multiple cities across the United States and around the world, hoping to spread good word of mouth and perhaps create a little bit of FOMO. Then it backfired. But why? For starters, the people showing up to these fan screenings were often the folks most excited for the film and most likely to have paid to see it in theaters. So Warner Brothers lost a couple $1 million in their opening weekend. What's the big deal? Well, on top of that, the screenings themselves were wildly mismanaged. Hundreds of fans waited for hours to get into screenings that they were surprised to learn were actually pre-booked for influencers or veterans or school children or some other group. Why is this bad? Well, because maybe the 100 influencers enjoyed the movie and spread good word of mouth about it, but the thousands of other people who had been waiting in line for hours were now pissed off and spreading horrible word of mouth about their terrible experiences trying to see The Flash. But okay, maybe that was just my personal experience. I was one of those people that was turned away. I'm biased. It's just Warner Brothers.
I hate you!
Anyway, the fan screening started almost a full month before the movie came out. That meant a full month of viewers discussing the film online, a full month of leaked CGI being criticized and torn apart, a full month of major plot points being spoiled. All this meant that by the time The Flash actually released in theaters, it felt like old news. CG die. Speaking of those leaked scenes, several of the more CGI-heavy, spoilery scenes were leaked online weeks before the film opened to the general public. The cam rip quality of the clips didn't help the already wonky visual effects. The movie was spoiled, and weeks of the clips being made fun of online made the film feel like a joke. This killed the hype. The crushing weight of hype. Which brings us to the next reason The Flash flopped. Warner Brothers simply created unrealistic expectations. For months before the film's debut, Warner Brothers was hyping it up as one of the best superhero films ever made, with glowing reviews from the likes of Stephen King, Tom Cruise, and James Gunn himself. Warner Brothers debuted the film at CinemaCon in the same way that Top Gun Maverick had been screened before it would go on to make an astronomical amount of money and save cinemas in the process. The Flash CinemaCon screening led to positive buzz, with many critics declaring it one of the best superhero films ever made. When the film finally opened to the general public and reviews were mixed, the hype was officially murdered. The reign of the gun. Prior to The Flash's release, James Gunn made a presentation about the future of DC now that he and Peter Safran were captains of the ship. He outlined his plan for the new DC universe, which led audiences to believe that the old DC extended universe was essentially dead. Why be invested in what were essentially room temp leftovers like Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Aquaman 2, and The Flash? Why care at all if these films would essentially be meaningless going forward? Would any of these characters return? Where does Pattinson's Batman fit in? It was all so confusing and exhausting. Ezra. Then of course, there's Ezra Miller. Miller's troubles have been well documented. Some would argue that the general audience was not aware of Ezra's troubles, but even a casual Google search of the actor or The Flash would bring up Ezra's allegations. Most of the marketing centered Michael Keaton's Batman, and Keaton himself did not do much press for The Flash. In fact, most of the press for the film was done by Supergirl, relative newcomer herself, Sasha Calle. Straddled with a controversial star, The Flash was fighting an uphill battle from the start. Aftertaste. Warning, spoilers ahead. I actually think the film ends on a good note with the reveal that Ezra Miller's Barry Allen is now stuck in another universe where George Clooney is Bruce Wayne. It's just goofy and fun. The post-credit scene with Aquaman is a big bowl of nothing, though, that undermines the rest of the film. It leaves the audience with a feeling of, so what? The end credits feels like a scene that's trying to explain why Jason Momoa is still Aquaman in the upcoming Aquaman 2, and I think it's trying to imply that the film takes place in this weird Clooneyverse that Miller's Barry Allen is in, but it's just confusing and again, feels like it just did not need to be there at all. Personally, I think The Flash is overall a crowd-pleasing film, but this post-credit scene sours the experience. As someone who attended an early preview screening where this post-credit scene was not included, the word of mouth out of the theater was way stronger than another screening I attended that included the post-credit scene. So what do you think? Did I miss a reason why The Flash failed at the box office? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, back to watching movies.